Hey YouTube, now this is my Overlord build. Now, I'm not going to say that is Dragonic Overlord the X, or as people call it, the Cross, which, sorry, but that is an X, not a cross. A cross looks like basically either a T or a plus. Anyway, but he is in the deck. So, let's start things off with three, oh, three Dragonic Overlord the X. He is, believe it or not, the secondary ride of the deck. This is going to sound weird, but you do not want to ride him if at all possible. And yes, as you can see, the first one on the top here is SP, which is pretty awesome if I do say so myself. But yes, he is in there for a different reason than usual, which I will explain after. Um, Basically, he's there as an overlord for now, until they make another better option. One Dragonic Overlord, the end. And this one happens to be the Fighters Collection SP. I do have three more ends that are from the original set 5. I'm just only using one because he's there specifically to Legion with the X. Basically, you Legion with the X, fetch another copy of the X, and then your opponent ends up paranoid of does he have another copy of Dote or does he not. So it is permanently just there to freak people out. It is a psych out tactic, which is why I was considering using this deck up at regionals because it was best of 1 games. So yeah, needless to say, a little bit of fun. But the main ride of the deck is 4 Perdition Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord the Great. 2 of mine are Legion Rare. Almost picked up an SP up in Toronto for regionals, but I didn't feel like spending about 30 bucks. Anyway, he is the main ride of the deck because of his overwhelming goodness in this deck, because this build is a mix of both retiring as well as restanding. So, yeah, basically use his skill to swing at rearguard, stand, swing at vanguard. Or if your opponent's just going to be a jerk, swing rearguard, stand, swing rearguard. I've only done that once because the opponent was just being a jerk with how they were playing, so I said, you know what, fine, no counterblast for you. And it was fun because they were actually getting annoyed by it. Now, the other skill for retiring something that is on your rearguard that has the same name as something on Vanguard is something I've only done a couple times, but it's actually come in handy with Neo Flame, so it's pretty decent. But again, he is your main ride of the deck. He is the main grade 3 you want to ride, and he is one of your ways to potentially win just by grinding it out, honestly. The X is just there basically as a substitute until you get to the grade. For grade 2s, we have the usual, well, the usual suspects anyway. For Dragonic Burnout, he's there for both popping and recycling, because a lot of people don't actually know this, but if you want, you can just return an Overlord from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck. You do not have to do the Soul Blast pop. You can just call him to recycle an Overlord from your drop if you really need to. He's actually fairly good for that, and I've actually done that more times than using the second effect, which sounds weird, but I am running Calamity Tower Wyvern, so fact is, I'm not always going to have Soul. Apart from that, he's just a 9k vanilla. Now, as per obvious statement earlier, since I have 4 grades, I must be using 4 Perdition Dragon Dragonic Neoflame, again, 2 Legion Rares. Now, Neoflame is there for combo popping. Suppose I use Burnout when I have Neoflame in the opposite column, so pop something with Burnout in the same column as Neoflame, Counterblast 1, look at that, there goes a column. Now there's more plays to be used with, say, Mustafa or even my starter Sadeg, like for example striding Mustafa, call Neoflame, and then either use like Gatling Claw or Mustafa to set off the Neoflame skill, and then Counterblast 1 for the Neoflame, and then send Sadeg into the soul. The opponent has just lost between 3 to 4 units, possibly even 5 depending as to the combos you're able to chain, for almost no cost. It's really, really good. So yes, There are people who do not like using Neoflame and will only like minimalize how many are in the deck, but if you can pull it off in the right combos, he's really, really good. And lastly, of course, 4 Burning Horn Dragon. He is a 12k attacker so long as you have an Overlord Vanguard. And this is going to sound weird, but he is actually the one card that I have had the most difficulty getting from the entire deck, because the one person who had them ended up getting rid of them. So I had to end up going hunting everywhere to find them, to the point of buying boxes of set 5 to try to pull him, and I would not. For whatever reason, even in a box and a half, I did not pull a single one. Next up, grade 1s. And yes, this deck is a lot less elaborate than my Shadow build, because Shadows are, I want to say, combo effective. This one is more so smash. So for Protect Orb Dragon, the usual Perfect Guard, I use him because of the unflipping ability. I have tried using non-unflip Perfect Guards in this deck, but honestly it's too counterblast heavy for it. So I have to use Protect Orbs. Plus, Kagero Mirror Match almost never happens at my locals, because only myself and I think 2 other people have it, and the other 2 very rarely ever play it. So Protect Orb, usually fairly good. And with D-Police, I just try to get rid of Laurel as soon as I can. Instead of Gojos, I use Force Heal Dragon Cursei, because Gojo, I don't like the fact that you have to rest him to drop draw him for, yeah, it's kind of bad. Cursei, all you have to do is call him when your opponent has a grade 2 Vanguard or Rear Guard. So instead of just ride the Gojo, rest, drop draw, I can actually call Cursei, drop draw, and still have a booster or an attacker depending as to the circumstances, because I can still call him in front of, say, Sadeg until the opponent's on grade 3, and he can still actually hit. He's my preferred choice over Gojo, just because of the fact that he doesn't rest, to sum it up. Now, we also have 3 Lava Flow Dragons. Now, with 8 grade 3s, you would think, oh, striding's not always going to be a problem. But with this deck, because of how it's built, I actually need these because I don't want to be dropping my grade 3s all the time to stride, because of the aces, as you can imagine. So, yes, I have a playset of the signed ones. I just felt like using the normal ones for this. So, yeah, because it would break up the playset. Minor OCD fit. He's otherwise just there to stride. So there's no Blade Master in the deck for the other skill. That's all he is. 7k booster or 7k attacker if you have to ride him or call him. 2 Calamity Tower Wyvern. People will usually say, why not 4? Because you can loop. No, I do not like the loop. The loop implies that the game is going way too long. And this is also considering into the factor that my locals is actually very rush heavy. Like, people have tried to counter Aqua Rush with just rushing on their own, so I had to adapt to it. And I do not like the cycle of Ride Calamity Tower Legion. It's too annoying, and honestly, I'd rather just have the immediate draw from Calamity Tower. For zeros, we have, for the starter, Dragon Knight Sadeg. He is arguably the best starter for Kagero that is currently available, until they give back Conroe. And if people keep saying that they're not going to ban Conroe, then the moment that Spike Brothers get access to Stride, Mecha Trainer's probably gone, because he does literally the same thing. The only difference is that Kagero has access to Nouvelle Vague, which, even if Conroe came back, would not be seeing much play. For those of you who don't know what Sadeg does, when an opponent's unit on their field has been retired by one of your card effects, he shoves himself into the soul, then your opponent picks one of their own rearguards and retires it. Now, if they only have one rearguard when you're activating the skill, it means they're forced to pick that rearguard automatically. Usually you want to use him as the last skill in a chain, so that way he will be going off last when they only have one rearguard that qualifies for it. Otherwise, he sits there as a 5k booster and is just enough to be actually valid instead of Red Pulse Draco Kid. I have tried with Red Pulse, I don't mind Red Pulse, but I end up getting too many grade 3s too quickly, so I stick with Sadeg. I even used him when I was playing Dauntless Reverse for the longest time. He is a real help for any Kagero player. Next up, we have, for the triggers, 4 Blu-ray Draco Kid, staple crit. You could use stands in the deck to be fair, but I prefer the criticals because you're just restanding anyway. 2, there we go, 2 Embodiment of Spear Tar. This deck is using 6 crits, 6 draw, because you actually need the hand, and it makes it easier for you to drop cards to be able to restand. Also, I've not really had issues with going 6/6. It's really nice, actually. So the 2 Tar, I'm using old school triggers, as you can tell. 4 Gatling Claw Dragon, the crit trigger of choice for pretty much any Kagero player. Counterblast 1, shove him into the soul, pop a grade 0. Or less, apparently, as it says on some of the prints anyway. So, yeah, really good. 4K booster, though, so you don't usually call him. But he does also help fill up the soul. This one's going to be weird for people. 2 Treasure Hunt Draco Kid. Now, I would be using Seal Dragon Art Peak, but I didn't necessarily feel like that it was needed in this build. Besides, Treasure Hunt, how often do you see this guy played? I figure, why not? It'll surprise people, and it's actually really nice art, so figure, cool, he's good to go. And the first heal trigger, 4 Dragon Monk Genjo. Unfortunately, these aren't from set 1, they're from the extra booster, because I lost my original playset somewhere. But they are still staple heal triggers. If you really want, you could try 16 crit. A guy at my locals did, and it didn't turn out too well. So for the strides, we have it fairly simple. 4 Heavenly Supreme Dragon Emperor. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon. Dragonic Overlord the Ace. He is basically the main win condition, except for grinding out with the Great. Because the restand and the basically that's it. That's also why Lava Flow's in here, because I can drop Lava Flow to stride, keep the grade 3s in hand, which are all Overlords, to drop for the Overlord cost in this guy's effect. And for those of you who don't know, when you stride into him, at any point during your turn before you attack, you can counterblast 2, and then flip a copy of himself. He loses triple drive and goes to twin, but then after the first attack, he restands, gains 5,000 power, but you have to discard a card from hand and another card with Overlord in its name. So yeah, that's also why I have so much draw engine in there, ways to cycle. So the 6 draws and the 2 Calamity Towers. Now, to help balance the counterblast heavy part, we have 4 Divine Dragon Knight Mustafa. So, yes, most people only use 2 because Mustafa is there easily to flip up a copy, meaning you have GB2 active almost instantly. I use him because of more than that. Number 1, he has that effect, yes, but number 2, he is easy to chain link destruction with Neoflame and Sadeg, as well as the effect that on the first time I stride into him, basically 1 unit gets the ability on hit, flip a damage face up. If I do it on the second time I stride him, then flip the other copy, it means my entire front row gains that ability that on hit, I unflip a damage. So I'm more likely to be able to use more counterblasts, and thus more likely to be able to use the ace. It's fairly simple, basic beatdown build that will just keep swinging and swinging and swinging. Either you end up burning through too much, and the opponent's able to overwhelm, which is very rare actually, or you win or you deck out. That's basically how it works, because you don't want to keep relegioning every turn. This build is grindy beatdown. So yes, I hope you guys enjoy. Next deck coming up is probably Silverthorn or Claret Sword. So yes, have a good night guys, bye.